Somewhere
past the edge of convention,
beyond the boundaries of tomorrow,
lies a special kind of impossible.
A kind of impossible
where pioneers forge ahead.
Where no idea is too bold.
And no challenge too great.
Because making a 200-ton airplane disappear is impossible.
Until it's not.
Predicting cyber attacks before they happen is impossible.
Until it's not.
And solving the mysteries of the universe is impossible.
Until it's not. It's our job to break free from what is
to what could be.
Ready to leave the boundaries of what's known?
To define possible.
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 Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Suzanne Wilson-Heckenberg, President of the Intelligence and National Security Alliance.
Good evening. Good evening. It warms my heart that everyone is still engaged in conversation. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. It does give me great pleasure to see you all here at INSA's first in-person leadership dinner in 2 years. I hope you enjoyed the receptions. Please feel free to go ahead and start your salads. As we transition to live events and we can no longer hit the mute button, please remember to keep the conversation to a minimum. I know our guests this evening will appreciate it. Tonight, we are pleased to host General Paul M. Nakasone, Commander of U.S. Cyber Command, Director of the National Security Agency, and Chief of Central Security Services. He is no stranger to INSA. General Nakasone has been a consistent participant in our annual summit and was our honored guest at a leadership dinner back in 2018. Welcome back, General Nakasone. We thank you not only for your leadership, but for your service to our nation and for making time to speak to our guests and members this evening. Briefly, I would like to recognize our corporate sponsors who've made this evening possible. Acclaim Technical Services, AWS, BAE Systems, General Dynamics Information Technology, Hawkeye 360, Leidos, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Quadrant, Raytheon Intelligence and Space, and SIAC. A round of applause for our sponsors. And also special thanks to my boss, Tish Long, for agreeing to moderate this evening's Q&A. Tish, I'm sure you will keep General Nakasone on his toes this evening. We welcome our friends from the media. As a reminder, this event is on the record. There are note cards at your table. I would encourage you all to pass questions along to our amazing INSA interns, many who are looking for jobs in the intelligence community. Thanks to GDIT for the note card sponsorship. But first, we're going to hear some prepared remarks from General Nakasone. So to introduce General Nakasone this evening, please join me in welcoming Tom Arsenau, President and Chief Executive Officer of BAE Systems, who will join me on stage.
Good evening. You know, I have to admit, and as I'm sure many of you have already observed, isn't it nice to be together in person in a non-virtual way for a change, huh? Yeah. to see people in 3 dimensions, right? I mean, this really is pretty special. Let's hope for more and more of that in the not-too-distant future. Speaking of being together, and before I introduce our esteemed guest speaker this evening, I just wanted to say that as a founding member company, BAE Systems is proud to support the efforts of INSA and programs like this that bring us all together to help build relationships and cultivate the trust that make this community strong. When we consider how our most notable adversaries are leveraging concepts like military-civil fusion and the like, and things, some things we can't discuss in a public forum, to achieve a more collaborative environment, it gives us all reason to appreciate the benefits that INSA provides by bringing us together like this, to discuss common challenges, to share ideas and solutions, and to find better ways to collaborate within and across the intelligence and national security community. I'm honored this evening to introduce one of the extraordinary leaders of this community, General Paul Nakasone. General Nakasone assumed his present duties as commander of the U.S. Cyber Command, director of the National Security Agency, and chief of the Central Security Service in May of 2018. He previously commanded U.S. Army Cyber Command from 2016 to 2018 and held command and staff positions across all levels of the Army, as well as several joint assignments around the globe, including serving as the Director of Intelligence for the International Security Assistance Force in Kabul, Afghanistan. A native of White Bear Lake, Minnesota, the General's long and distinguished career spans 35 years as an intelligence officer, following in the footsteps of his father, Edwin, a retired United States Army colonel who served in the Military Intelligence Service during World War II. General Nakasone, we are fortunate to have your steady hand at the helm of these critical national security organizations, and we are grateful for your long and considerable service to our nation. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming General Paul Nakasone. Thank you very much for that support. We appreciate time.
Wow, really good to be out on a school night tonight, I must say. Tom, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and to BAE and certainly to all of our sponsors. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm going to keep it short since we've already started dinner, and I hate to be the person standing between you and a good steak. But tonight, I'd like to talk briefly about the strategic environment and the way that the National Security Agency and U.S. Cyber Command is getting after that in terms of our talent, our technology, and our trusted partnerships. You know, it's hard to believe it's the middle of November. Next week is Thanksgiving. 38 shopping days left. And if you're like me, that's long-range planning. But I'm pleased to be back here at INSA. It's been 3 years since my last keynote, and a lot's changed. Disruptive technologies are a big topic these days, and I know everyone has one question in their mind tonight. How did the Army manage to bend the space-time continuum to bring back the classic Army throwback uniforms to the present day? So all I can say is that involves a lot of math, some quantum distortion fields, and some other worldly tech from Area 51 that we keep hidden away at the basement of NSA. Okay, but unlike the retro uniform, today's strategic environment is not a repeat of the threats we faced in the past, and let me talk a little bit about the strategic environment we see today. It does begin with China, that presents our greatest global challenge of our time. This is not Cold War 2.0. China is not the Soviet Union. You know, in 1973, China's total GDP was approximately $113 billion in today's dollars. In 2020, China's GDP was $14.7 trillion. By comparison, the US GDP in 2020 was $20.9 trillion. The Soviet Union could never challenge the United States economically. China can. The second aspect of our strategic environment today, I would tell you, is about competition below the level of armed conflict. In addition to China, other nation-states are aggressively pursuing their interests in undermining ours without triggering conflict. touching all aspects of our national power: economic, political, information, military. Nation states today can push misinformation and disruptive infrastructure and operations at great speed and at very little cost. Social media and network intrusions, especially when integrated with other elements of hard power in the joint force, can be force multipliers in times of crisis, competition, and conflict. But it's also the increasing threats to the homeland that we face today in strategic competition. The dawn of the missile age made clear that the oceans no longer afforded the physical protection Americans previously enjoyed. Today's interconnectedness has spawned new threats to the homeland, including adversaries using cyber means to intrude into U.S. critical infrastructure. This infrastructure that was built with an eye towards speed and efficiency rather than security and protection. The security environment is also about borderless challenges: cyber, COVID-19, climate change. Threats in cyberspace don't respect the borders in any particular state. We've seen this over the past 20 months. We've also seen it dominated by cyber intrusions. Think SolarWinds, Microsoft Exchange, Colonial Pipeline, JBS, Kaseya. The same goes for, again, COVID-19 and climate change. Some of the most vexing challenges we face require cross-border solutions and collaboration precisely because they naturally defy traditional boundaries. And the last element to this strategic environment is seeing the importance of speed, both in innovation and adoption. Technology innovation is an American strength, an engine for our economic growth, but we face competitors who have made it a point to steal our intellectual property and technological advantages. China and Russia are adept at accelerating their technological growth by quickly adapting innovations. China is also increasingly adept at innovating on its own. In this strategic environment in which speed is an imperative, we must continue to innovate, but also recognize the benefits and speed of adopting and adapting innovation. So what are we doing at NSA and Cyber Command? We're addressing these strategic challenges by investing in three critical areas: our talent, our technology, and our trusted partnerships. Let's talk a little bit about talent. The people of NSA have been a competitive advantage for both the agency and the nation for 70 years. In an era of strategic competition, coupled with increasingly complex and rapid technological advancements, NSA has been there, NSA will be there. To do that across both NSA and Cyber Command, both organizations must build and retain diverse, expert workforces with extraordinary skills and fierce dedication to mission. Diversity allows us to see the complex problems with a variety of different angles and perspectives and inform how we think critically about important issues. This leads to more creative solutions, which is exactly what we need to confront today's challenges. U.S. Cyber Command is also investing in attracting talent. Flexible hiring programs like Cyber Accepted Service to attract top talent at U.S. Cyber Command. We've also established an academic engagement network with eligible colleges, universities, and academic institutions to recruit talent. This network is designed to provide a consistent communications channel between U.S. Cyber Command and academia and enable all participants to stay updated on relevant issues, initiatives, and opportunities. Through these, we hope to recruit talent who want to be part of our team at Fort Meade and beyond. NSA is also streamlining its hiring processes in part of a broader effort to build and sustain a diverse, expert workforce. Reductions in the hiring timeline to 180 days, upgrading technology for interacting with applicants, allowing for improved communication during the hiring and security processes. For certain science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, language, and contracting positions, moving to a single job ad to ensure we can allow skilled applicants to compete for multiple open opportunities at once. NSA is also emphasizing education. Our national centers of academic excellence in cybersecurity and Gen Cyber programs run from primary education to graduate school, creating an educational pathway for a robust, capable cybersecurity workforce. We're also looking to make it easier for those who have left the intelligence community to rejoin public service. This approach is a win-win in my book for the U.S. government, for industry, and for those who are looking for richer, more fulfilling careers. But let's turn to technology. NSA is moving forward, building the next generation mission platforms that continue to produce intelligence and advantage and military overmatch, thanks to many of you in this audience. Think artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, high-performance computing. All of these come together to give NSA's unique competitive advantages. Relationships with industry and academia will allow us to maximize our ability to develop new technologies and achieve technological superiority and maintain that in the current security environment. So that brings me to the last and perhaps final critical to success, trusted partnerships. U.S. Cyber Command and NSA partner across the U.S. government, private sector, academia, and foreign allies to achieve common goals and outcomes. New partnerships are forming. This is a very dynamic space. U.S. Cyber Command and NSA partnerships with the private sector loom large. That's one of the reasons I'm here tonight. NSA created a cybersecurity collaboration center, get this, outside the NSA fence line. We work with more than 100 defense industrial-based companies and their cybersecurity providers, providing timely, agile, bidirectional collaboration to help combat cyber threats at scale and keep malicious cyber actors out of defense industrial-based networks. On the other hand, U.S. Cyber Command's Dreamport facility is a mission accelerator, hosting pilot projects to solve U.S. Cyber Command technological challenges such as prototyping on malware signature measurements and the deployment of zero-trust architectures, proactively supporting small defense industrial-based businesses, identifying areas of risk and vulnerability through open information sharing, and developing new tools and capabilities in concert with industry for our defensive cyber teams. NSA currently has contracts with more than 1,800 large and small commercial companies and academic entities. The technology, services, and products provided via these partnerships underpin all of our operations and provide robust security to our nation. We are also continuously encouraging commercial purchases and the use of small businesses in our procurements. NSA was a leader, and we're very proud of this, in implementing the CARES Act. In the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, we remain committed to the vitality of our industrial base and the retention of a cleared contractor workforce, reimbursing contractor costs incurred when personnel were denied access due to COVID-related illnesses or quarantine, paying for over 6 million hours of work, resulting in minimal attrition from our industry base. NSA has not only done this, but we've also exceeded our overall small business contracting goal, built our small business performance, and it's been one of the highest we've ever had since 2007. But tonight I want to take just a second to introduce and to mention a new partnership, that partnership with the National Cryptologic Foundation. The NCF will create opportunities for the public and private sectors to engage on cybersecurity and national security issues. This is a force multiplier for us, especially for our ability to enhance a cybersecurity education across the country. So, talent, technology, and trusted partnerships are key to our success in this strategic environment. But with the threats we're facing, we need to raise the bar and raise the bar collectively. We can do more, and industry must do more. That's where many of you come in. Cybersecurity is a shared problem. Government can't do it alone. Companies must be focused and vigilant in protecting their networks. We need industry to deliver uncompromised capabilities. There's always the risk of another supply chain attack like SolarWinds. The private sector must ensure that its products are built securely and verify its software is not compromised before it goes out to the tens of thousands of us in the DoD as customers. So in this era of strategic competition, government, academia, and industry partners must work together as a coalition with shared risks, shared goals, and shared solutions. Together, we can achieve and maintain the competitive advantages against our adversaries, build resilience at home, and defend forward. I want to thank INSA for inviting me back to speak tonight. It is truly an honor. As I said, it's nice to be out on a school night, and I'm looking forward to the continued conversation after dinner. Enjoy your meal.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the stage INSA President Suzanne Wilson-Heckenberg.
I know several of you all are still enjoying your desserts. I encourage you to do so as we resume our program. I just have a few brief announcements to make, so please bear with me. First, we are so pleased that so many NSA staffers could join us this evening. We know how challenging that bridge can be, and we are very appreciative of your support. Along that vein, we will be coming your way on December 9th, where we will be hosting an unclassified panel event out at the BWI Marriott. And then, following that, with our partners with the Fort Meade Alliance, we will be out there again in early March for both a classified and unclassified networking event. So please check out our website and consider registering for the evening's events. Now, as many of you all know, earlier this year, the INSA Foundation launched the Investing in the Future of the IC Workforce Scholarship Fund. I am going to geek out for a minute, so please bear with me. Thanks to the generosity of our donors, we were able to award 4 $5,000 scholarships to two undergrads and 2 graduate students pursuing careers that would provide them jobs in the intelligence and national security communities. We are fortunate to have such passionate, mission-driven students to lead our nation into the future. And I am immensely proud of the INSA Foundation for helping these students get to that point. For anyone who would like to support this program, a shameless shout out, we have an easy way to contribute this evening. Simply text INSF 44321. No amount is too small. And keep in mind for all the nonprofits you support that Giving Tuesday is November 30th. And finally, we recently opened nominations for the 2022 William Oliver Baker Award. Our organization's highest honor, the Baker Award, recognizes extraordinary contributions to the IC mission. Many of you all joined us on September 25th, where we recognize the Honorable Sue Gordon. So please mark your calendars for 2022, May 14th at the Omni Showroom. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight's discussion, INSA's Chairman Tish Long. Tish's career, as many of you all know, includes accomplishments that are many. Director of NGA, Deputy Director of DIA, Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, to name just a few of her leadership roles. Added to that illustrious resume, this year marks Tish's 6th year of service as INSA's chairman. We are honored to have her lead this discussion and present her questions. Please join me in welcoming both Tish and General Nakasone to the stage.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Suzanne. Let me just say that it is wonderful to be back in person for a leadership dinner. We, of course, as Suzanne mentioned, had the Baker dinner. We were last together, Paul, for the summit. So you were at the summit with your co-directors.
Scott Barrier was with us.
Scotty was with us, as well as Paul Abbott and the other agency directors. But our first leadership dinner. So I think it's fitting that you are our first leadership dinner back in person.
It's good to be back.
It is good to be back. And it's good to see everyone here. Thank you all for being here. So, Paul, in your remarks, you talked about talent, technology, and trusted partnerships. And we'll touch on all 3 of those. I have chairman's prerogative and moderator prerogative, a bunch of questions. But again, a reminder to the audience, please get your questions ready because we will save some time for audience questions. I'm going to start with one outside of those three topics.
Okay.
And that is, it's been 3 years since we were last on this stage together. What's changed since then?
Wow, what's changed? Strategic environment, certainly. 3 years ago, we weren't talking about China. We weren't talking about cybersecurity in the sense of its national security. We weren't necessarily talking about malicious actors and what they were doing in our nation to the extent that we are today. I think what's changed for our agency at the National Security Agency is the growth of cybersecurity, a directorate, the idea that NSA is more public-facing. We're taking credit for the work that we're doing with private industry, the fact that we have a center outside of our facilities that's unclassified, that people can drive up to, that we're engaging with the private sector. Then I think the last thing that changed is really the close and developed partnership between the National Security Agency and U.S. Cyber Command. What we saw with the Russia Small Group, what we saw with election security, what we've seen with ransomware. This is a partnership that operates with speed, agility, and unity of effort. So that's a little bit of 3 years.
Okay. We could take the rest of the evening and just do follow-up questions on all of that. So let's take the first one, and it was actually something that I wanted to talk about because you've been talking about this lately and you just mentioned it, and that is cybersecurity as national security. Can you elaborate on that? I mean, what do you mean by that? What are the implications for NSA, for Cyber Command, and for everyone sitting here?
Let's review the past 11 months. SolarWinds, Microsoft Exchange, Colonial Pipeline, JBS, Kaseya. We've had supply chain attacks, we've had zero-day vulnerabilities, we've had implants. That's in 11 months. Now think about that in terms of what we were thinking about as an agency and a command even a year ago. And if someone would have said, hey, Paul, there's ransomware, my response probably would have been something along the lines of, well, that's crime, and I'm sure law enforcement will take care of that. We don't live in that world anymore.
No.
And we can't live in that world anymore. I think, as I mentioned tonight, this is, however, a partnership between what we're doing on, obviously, the public and where the private sector is. And I do think that there is a realization that we can't do this alone. And so this partnership has to exist, and it's got to get even more powerful.
So before we come to that partnership, because you talked about everything that's happened in the last 11 months, can you talk about deterrence in cyberspace? I mean, you just listed all of those things that have happened, which it seems like some of them were a long time ago, but that's COVID time. Do you think about deterrence in cyberspace the way we always talked about deterrence from a nuclear perspective?
So certainly don't think about it in that sense. I think that, growing up, and as many of us did within the realm of, this idea of nuclear deterrence, which is really binary. Either you are deterred or you aren't deterred. This isn't cyberspace. This is a domain where actors come in rapidly. It's not controlled by the government in terms of monopoly of power. It's relatively inexpensive. And so the way that we think about it is much in the same way that our department thinks about it. So how do we do an integrated effort? How do we bring partners to it? How do we operate in multiple domains? How do we ensure that, there's a rich partnership between the public and the private sector? This is how we operate. And I would say that, for us at U.S. Cyber Command, the National Security Agency, we think of persistent engagement, this idea of always being able to enable your partners or being able to act. That's what its life is like in the cybersecurity domain today.
So enabling your partners, or your partners enabling you.
We share information. Private sector shares information with us. The idea of a cyberspace collaboration center, being able to give and to also take. I think this is an important piece. It's the partnership we have with the National Cryptologic Foundation and being able to look at talent broadly. These are all things that are enablements, right?
Mm-hmm. Are we sharing enough information?
So I think that we can always share more, right? I mean, that's obviously what is so important for us. I think perhaps the question should be is, what's unique about what you share?
What's unique about what you share?
So we are, obviously focused outside the United States. We are the U.S. SIGINT system. We are the ability to really inform what our adversaries are doing outside of the country. And that's a tremendous difference in terms of what NSA brings to this and what Cyber Command with their authorities and capacities do as well.
And how can industry support that?
Well, I mean, I think that, broadly, as I talked about before dinner, our focus is on the defense industrial base. That's the one sector of our critical infrastructure that we have responsibility for as a Department of Defense. That's where NSA and Cyber Command are working towards. Broadly, I think that the continued partnership between private industry and what CISA is doing and the Joint Cyber Development Collaborative that Jen Easterly is running and the work that Chris Inglis is doing as the National Cyber Director, all critical pieces of it. We have the focus, obviously, on the defense industrial base and trying to bring that information and being able to understand what our adversaries are trying to do.
So speaking about the defense industrial base, can you talk a little bit about what some of your budget priorities or your acquisition priorities are? And again, bringing the audience into that, how can industry support those priorities?
So at our agency, I think when you take a look at our priorities, first of all, begins with the movement to strategic competition. We take a look at the world today, and obviously it's much different than the world upon which we spent the past 2 decades in with violent extremist organizations. These are near-peer threats that we're looking at now. Second thing is the scope of our cybersecurity mission. How do we ensure that we can provide the information and be able to act with speed and agility within that domain? The third piece for us is this idea of being able to really build and recruit a talented workforce. At the end of the day, it's all about your talent. It is all about your talent. And even in a place like NSA and Cyber Command where we have so much technology, it's all about your talent. And I think the last thing is our next generation platforms. Those are the areas that we're prioritizing. So when you take a look at our cryptanalytic capability, what we're trying to do with keys, codes, and crypto, what we're doing with our different information networks, that's our priorities.
So talent, and that was one of the 3 things you talked about before dinner. And we were talking about this at the dinner table, when you said, and putting on my old government hat, I agreed with you, 180 days is a goal that you have to bring talent on board. I think some of our industry partners would say that's far too long. Now, they live within, many of them, the same security clearance process that you do, and so they live within that 180 days. But pure commercial industry isn't a part of the security clearance regime, and they can bring talent on in the same day. How do you compete with that?
Well, I think I'd take a step back and say, so when I think of talent, really it's 3 different parts that I think about. First of all is the recruiting part. How do we recruit the talent that we need at both the command and the agency, across the government, across the nation, across the demographic base that is representative of our country. The second thing is, how do I retain that talent? We're going to probably hire over 2,000 people at NSA this year. Okay, that's probably where we're going to be in terms of what our recruiting numbers are. But really it's, okay, how do I retain the very best folks that we need to have? And then the last part, I think that I've come to this, what's changed over 3 years is I realized that, after watching this, that there is a population that moves in and out of government, that wants to move in and out of government. And so the third R would be, after recruit and retain, is rejoin. How do I, encourage folks that have left to come back to our agency? A lot of folks want to come back, but as well as I do, being able to come back to government after you've left it with a clearance, there are far easier things to do in this world.
There are, and I will tell you, I encourage you to continue to think that way. Not that there are far easier things to do, but to make it easy for the talent that wants to come back, to enable them to come back, whether it's keeping in touch with them through alumni programs or just outreach programs, because there are folks who want to come back and want to continue to serve. So I'm glad that that you're thinking that way. Let's pivot a little bit. You've talked about this before. In fact, I mentioned the last time we were together was at the summit, and you talked about at the summit election security. So you noted then that you were already working to mitigate our adversaries' ability to influence the 2022 midterm elections. How's that going?
It's going well.
Talk about that?
Hard to believe. In a year, we'll be coming out of another election, right? We'll be in the midterm elections.
Yes.
This is an enduring mission for the department, for our agency, and for our command. I think the way I would answer is, what have we learned over the past several election cycles? We began in 2018 with the Russia Small Group, which was an idea that we had to say, hey, let's bring the best people from the agency together with the best people from the command and figure out how do we ensure a safe and secure election for the midterms in 18. What we found out was that we could do that in partnership, but we also found out we needed other partners. And the other partners at that time were FBI and CISA, and to a large extent, our foreign partners as well. Fast forward to 2020, what did we learn? That we had more adversaries, that we had more committed adversaries, that the agency and the command continued to have success, and that the partnership became even broader, like, hey, let's bring in the National Guard, let's bring in private sector, or let's bring in academia that really has an understanding of some of these adversaries that are working. And really, we came down to three different areas, Tish, that we can make an impact. First of all is understanding the threat. We feel as though we understand the threat to our elections better than anyone. The second thing is, how do you share information? How do you share information across the government? How do you share information with partners? How do you share information of adversaries' tradecraft? Those are all things that we've learned. And the last thing is, how do you impose cost? I mean, how do you ensure that adversaries that are attempting to perhaps interfere in your elections don't have that ability? And that's what we've been able to do over several elections. And we'll use that same template in 22.
Makes me feel good. Thank you for what you and the agency, see, we can see the agency for other agencies, for what Cyber Command and the whole of government is doing there. So, we've talked about talent. You've talked a little bit about technology. Let's talk a little bit more about partnerships. So, fast forward on the Collaboration Center. Fast forward a year, 2 years. What do you hope to see come out of that? What do you envision the partnership looking like with the Collaboration Center?
I want to get to scale. Scale is what we need to get to with the defense industrial base. We have, tens, hundreds of thousands of partners in our defense industrial base. How do I get to the scale to be able to share information that we understand what's going on? What are the key threats that are out there? How do we mitigate those type of things? What are the abilities for us to continue to, provide services that might be helpful against an adversary that's trying to get in our defense industrial base? So the first thing I would say is scale. The second piece is that if you came to our Collaboration Center, I think one of the things that you would come away with is just this tremendous amount of energy that is coming from both the private sector and the folks that work there from our agency. It's a young, dynamic workforce. It's a workforce that is operating many times from night, that are doing, ability to take messages and chats from partners. But the other thing that I would say is to continue to be able to provide the technical base that our workforce is able to provide. This is what's really attractive coming into the NSA Cyberspace Collaboration Center. You're talking to an analyst that understands the domain you're operating and probably understands the adversary threat actor that you're facing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a terrific idea. NGA has done something very similar, so it's good to see others within the community. Easier for NGA in some ways because of the commercial imagery aspect that they have. A little bit harder for you. But that said, I look forward to our next conversation and hearing how it's going. So a number of questions coming in. Please keep the questions coming. Several of them we have talked about. Several of them are very similar. So let me put a couple of these together.
Okay.
And we talked a little bit about this during dinner as well. So let me see if I can fashion this in a way that I think you can answer, because it might border on some classified.
Shocking.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking with this audience. Let's see, this is a crystal ball one, so I'm not going to ask you that. But let's talk about Russia. You just mentioned Russia. How concerned are you about the massing of troops on the Ukraine border? And can you talk about anything associated with that? I left off the part two that I know you can't talk about.
So obviously, what I would say is, we continue to maintain strong vigilance against all of our adversaries. We're working very closely with General Todd Walters and the department in terms of, what is occurring and what our options are. I think the best way to answer it is that, there is not a single day or a single minute where we don't have folks that are obviously very, very focused on this and many other issues that come to the forefront like this.
Mm-hmm. Well said. So I missed this testimony. A top FBI official testified today that they had, quote, not seen a decrease in ransomware attacks in the past couple of months originating from Russia, unquote. You, General Nakasone, previously said if Russia doesn't act against ransomware hackers, the United States will. Has that time come? I don't actually recall you saying that. Perhaps you did.
I'll have to go in the Wayback Machine, I guess,
yeah.
Figure that one out. So I'm not familiar with the testimony that was given today.
Yeah.
Here's what I would say. Ransomware. Let's talk a little bit about ransomware. Of the things that we're seeing, I would tell you, particularly within the overall domain, the scope, scale, and sophistication of what we face from our adversaries today is different. I have said that. I think that anyone that operates, all of you that operate in the domain today understand that. Ransomware is one part of that. I would also tell you that ransomware is unique in the sense of the cybersecurity domain. It affects everyone. It affects our government, local, state, national. It affects the private sector, as many of you know. It's affecting our allies as well. Here's what our adversaries should know, is that we have a very capable force. We have a very, very good agency and a very, very good command. And it is, obviously our job to provide a series of options to ensure the security of the nation. This is a national security issue, as I've said, in terms of ransomware. And so we'll continue to operate. Again, I think that this is something that we will be doing for a while. And this is why it's so important that this partnership between the private and public sector continues. The story that I had told previously at Kevin Mandia's gathering was the fact that how impressed we were that FireEye Mandia came to the National Security Agency soon after that they were concerned about a foreign adversary within their network. They came to us because of our expertise and our partnership and our ability to understand what adversaries are doing. This is the type of thing that I think is going to be successful against ransomware actors.
And it does impact all of us, and I think that Mandia coming forward recognizes that, and it's that trusted partnership that you talked about. It really is going to take all of us working together to defeat those adversaries. So another question from the audience: what is the intelligence community doing to deal with the rise of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies being used by both state and non-state actors? And part two, and I'll just give it to you up front, to what extent can the IC identify illicit actors using cryptocurrencies for nefarious purposes?
So I think we're pretty good on the first part, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
So again, in terms of our cyber adversaries today, we have to be able to understand the personas that operate. We have to understand the infrastructure they're using. We have to understand the way that money is being transferred. This is no different than what we faced with counterterrorism over the past 2 decades. In fact, some of our best analysts, have moved from chasing terrorists to chasing ransomware criminals here. And so, one of the parts of that is being able to understand cryptocurrency and being able to understand how it works. Not surprising, we have an incredibly strong technical workforce that is pretty good at that. But it's also with the understanding that there's a tremendous amount of work that's being done with the private sector as well to understand, how this is occurring and how we might be able to, as the second part of the question indicates, have a better leg up on these criminals. So, not surprising, we're working pretty hard on that.
Mm-hmm. It's good to hear. So, switching gears, if a company were going to invest R&D dollars in advancing their offensive computer network operations capabilities, where could it create the most mission impact? So again, how can they help you?
Yeah. So I think that what we're always looking for is this ability for us to be able to operate in a number of different domains. And one of the things that the question points out is, hey, where might we be successful in doing that? I think that the capabilities and I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, you can take computer network operations out of there and substitute any part of your mission set in there.
Right, and so I think the capabilities development piece is one of the areas that we continue to work very, very closely with the private sector on, both at U.S. Cyber Command and at the National Security Agency. That is something that is not going to go away. I think that's a tremendous partnership that has been very, very helpful to us. This is a domain that continues to have such important needs, and I think a lot of those needs have been worked very, very closely with many of the audience members tonight because it's so important for us.
So something that has not cropped up in the questions, I had further back in my set of questions from a technology perspective is machine learning. How are you applying machine learning in your problem set? And again, what might you be lacking? Where, to take this question, where could companies be investing their internal R&D to help you out there?
You can well imagine we're very, very interested in language capabilities. And, one of the things that we've been working very, very hard is, how do we take a variety of languages and use machine learning to help us to provide initial triage, to be able to provide, a variety of capabilities against languages that may not be spoken that regularly. Think about some of the places that we have to operate as a global power. You can imagine some of those languages are not high-density languages, and so we're interested in being able to do that. And I think that that's an area that continues to have great potential.
I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good one. Congress has encouraged DoD to implement a cyber threat hunting program on defense industrial base networks. Is this even feasible? Is this something that you're looking at, that the DIB should be looking at? And if so, what would a program like that look like?
So I think that's really been something that the folks at the Pentagon, particularly in the acquisition field, have talked about with the private sector. This would not be something necessarily that our agency, our command would be involved in. We are obviously focused outside the United States and doing that type of work. But I think the question becomes is, how does industry be able to ensure that there is, a relative degree of surety in what they're doing? And I think that, this idea of being able to look at very, very high-end cybersecurity firms that look at penetration testing, that look at hunting, that look at other capabilities is pretty important these days.
Okay. Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you wanted me to ask you?
I'll leave that to you, Tish. How's that?
Okay. So, thank you, Larry. Oh, my. There's a whole lot here. As I'm going through these, it's actually been some time since I've been out to NSA. What would I see new from the last time I visited?
Here's a statistic that's shocking to me. 80% of our workforce has been hired since 9/11. 80%. 80%. I remember 9/11. Most of us remember 9/11 like it was yesterday. 80% of our workforce. So I would tell you that the demographic of the workforce, the age is the first thing that you probably notice. The second piece is our construction. It's called East Campus. 10 buildings, 4 parking garages, about $4.5 billion, 17,000 people that are moving from a number of different facilities to the East Campus, state of the art. It is just a beautiful facility on Fort Meade. In fact, it was so beautiful that it cost us 2 18-hole golf courses.
Okay. So, there, you got to laugh there. So let's.
But I think that, so I mean, coming back to that point is, and I think this is true of, I think Scotty Barry would say the same thing. This is really about an ability to continue that momentum of, this hiring of the workforce that is so critical for us. I mean, I was really shocked when I saw that number. It's just, it just goes to show that we have a workforce that is different than necessarily perhaps when I came in the government or you came in the government, and there is a transitory effect of this, and we have to be mindful of that.
And while it may seem like yesterday, it was 20 years ago, which is hard to imagine for those of us who actually do remember that day so well. So you mentioned Chris Inglis and his new position. How's the interaction with the National Cyber Director? What impact does that have on NSA and Cyber Command?
So we've talked a lot about what's happened since January in terms of what our adversaries have done to us. I think it's probably worth talking about. So what have we done? I think some very, very positive steps. First of all, an executive order that's been put out by the administration to talk about how do we organize ourselves and be able to look at the broader cybersecurity. Secondly is the establishment of a national cyber director with Chris Inglis. We're pretty familiar with Chris, having been a former deputy director at our agency. A brand new CISA director, Jan Easterly. Oh, she was at NSA as well. And then a deputy national security advisor for emerging threats and cyber. That's Ann Newberger. She was at our agency as well.
Yeah.
So I would tell you it's going very, very well. Very, very pleased to see Chris and Jen and Ann working a lot of this. I think the piece that is instructive for all of us is, so how do we operate in the defense of the nation cybersecurity? And this is still being worked. So what are the roles and responsibilities? That's where I think Chris is very masterful in being able to bring all of us together.
Indeed. And there is a question here about speaking to NSA CyberCom's interaction with CISA. Anything additional to say specifically there, with Jen and how you see that interaction growing over time?
I just think that so important for whatever we can do in partnership. Take a look at the responsibilities of what CISA has in terms of our critical infrastructure. What do we bring? Again, I think the uniqueness of our ability to bring foreign intelligence and technical talent to this domain, and I think also this collaboration of how do we look at threats to our nation in a way that, one, we might be able to operate outside the United States to warn of this, or how do we provide information to help her in her role. And so looking forward to the continued strong partnership.
Defend forward. You mentioned the executive order, and my understanding is the executive order called for you as the national manager for national security systems, as well as for NSA and other agencies to recommend contracting changes to enhance cybersecurity. That's something this audience might be interested in. Is there progress that has been made there? Anything that you see coming
There is,
down?
and I think that those are obviously things that I'll allow the administration to be able to roll out. This has been an ongoing discussion of, again, to my point in the speech, so what's the responsibility of us? What's the responsibility of the private sector? How do we look at this domain in a way that we say that, hey, what we're going to have to provide is perhaps different than what we provided in the past? We have adversaries that are very, very capable, adversaries that are looking to steal our intellectual property, that have an impact on our economy, that are much more pervasive than they have been in the past. And so I think this is a part of the way that the administration we'll be able to effectively deal with that.
We'll look for those things then coming.
I think so.
Coming further. Okay. Here is a question from a group of graduate students from Marymount University. So there are actually quite a few graduate students and undergraduate students here in the audience tonight. What have you learned throughout your career that you feel is vital for someone starting out in intelligence? So anything that you can share, something that they should know coming into the community? Or something you wish you had known when you were starting?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things is this idea of being able to write and speak effectively. I'm trying to think of myself in terms of when I was an undergraduate student, which was a few years ago.
Just a few.
A few, and I don't recall that being like one of the things that I thought was going to be really important for my career in the Army. A day doesn't go by when I'm sending an email or I'm speaking or briefing, or the ability for clear thought and being able to communicate that, critical. And that's one of the things that I think would be my advice is communication skills.
Absolutely. And there's actually another question that's very similar. In recent presentations, Chris Inglis has mentioned a renewed focus on critical thinking skills over math specialties to increase the pool of talent. What do you feel are the most important skills for a cyber smart workforce? So you have just given that. And I actually say the same all the time. It is that critical thinking, structured analysis, and most importantly, being able then to get that point across. So it is the communication skills.
Should I ask you a few questions, Tish?
No, I'm finished with those. So I think we can probably close with, so where do you see the agency going? Where are you taking things? Where do you see the agency going in the coming months and years?
So I would say that just coming back to the original theme that I had in my speech, which is I see an agency over the coming years that is going to be at the forefront of this new strategic environment. How do we look at competition? And competition is occurring today in cyberspace every single minute, every single hour. I want our agency positioned to be able to provide the insights and the information and the options for senior policymakers. Secondly, I see an agency that is at the top of its game, being able to recruit top talent. Someone says, hey, what do you think about all the time? I think about talent all the time. I mean, that's why the whole idea of why does it take so long for clearance? Why does it mean? Because I know that there is a tremendous amount of competition in this room alone for our top talent. And we want that top talent. And that top talent is going to be able to provide the insights and the knowledge that we need to be able to be at the forefront of what we need to do. And the last part is, I want us to be the trusted partner of choice. The trusted partner of choice across the interagency, across our allies, and across the private sector. Because my sense is that in this new strategic competition, the ones that have the best partnerships are the ones that are going to have the most success. And so that's where I see our agency going in the near term.
Well, that's really where we need to have your agency be in the near term and the long term. Fortunately, you have the mission that attracts that talent. I think the last time we talked, you said you had something on the order of 40,000 applications a year. It's probably double that at this point. And I talked to a number of students earlier this evening who were all here because they aspire to be a part of your agency at some point in the future.
NSA.gov, log on tonight, apply, we'll be ready.
And I think, as a citizen, it makes me feel good that there is such talent out there that does want to come work not only for NSA, but for the intelligence community writ large. and for our industry partners, because as you said, it is a partnership. It's a partnership between industry, it's a partnership amongst and between all of the agencies, both within the intelligence community, but also like with DHS, with CISA, as well as our foreign partners, which we really didn't touch on here this evening. But Paul, thank you very much. You've been very gracious with your time this evening.
It's great to see you.
You've been gracious to come back again and sit on this stage, and we look forward to having you back again.
Thanks a lot.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, General Nakasone. Small token of our appreciation from INSA.
Yeah, let's take a picture.
So thank you again to our attendees, to our sponsors. I wish everyone a safe and healthy Thanksgiving, and please feel free to take the table arrangements home with you this evening. Compliments of Raytheon Intelligence and Space. They may not make it to your Thanksgiving table, but they should last through the weekend. Thanks again.